Hey, today I am here with Rick Alexander. Rick is the author of Burn Your Couch and more recently, Ambitious Heroes and Heartache, a book about what it means to be more human. And Rick is also an instructor in an online course called The Trials, which is a course designed to help guide you through self-actualization and help you find a little more of a purpose and direction in life. And I mean, as long as I've known Rick, that has been his purpose and direction in life, is helping others to find theirs. And with the recent shutdowns, Rick was actually in the middle of transitioning from online to in-person businesses and has been working through that transition during the shutdown. So welcome, Rick.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited.
Oh, it's always great having you, or being on yours or whatever else. Also, check out Rick's Morning Coffee podcast too. I know. Are you still doing new episodes on that one?
Yeah. The morning coffee with Rick Alexander. I do like anywhere between 1 and 3 shows a week still.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, it was a little less than I used to listen to it, and then I think I've just fallen off some of my own habits lately too.
Yeah, well, we moved channels. I rebranded the show when it was Lionheart Radio. We were doing a show every day for a couple of years, and that was great. And I just realized, like, starting to define my thoughts around some other things and working on other projects, I just needed to take a little bit of time away.
Oh, that makes sense. So for you, being out in Denver, everything right now is almost completely locked down for you guys. I know it's pretty much emergency and essential services only, grocery stores and takeout and hospitals, you'd said.
Mm-hmm.
How have you been spending your time during the shutdown?
It has, it's gone a lot of different directions for me, but I took this as a moment. So just to kind of, like, for the listener to kind of clarify the situation that I'm in, because I think I've taken it pretty well, right? And the reason I would say that I've taken it well, and when I say well, I just mean my mental state has stayed on a pretty even keel. I found a lot of opportunities to increase my own growth and things like that. And that to me is a testament to the work that I've been doing for a long time and that a lot of people are doing right now. In the personal development space, like focusing on, like, what parts of your life you actually can control and make better, letting go of all of the things that you can't. To me, like, moments like this, moments of crisis, this is when all of that work actually matters, right? This is when it really gets tested. And I think a lot of times people are like, well, I think it's easy to see somebody thriving and then to think, well, they're not going through what I'm going through, like they maybe have it easy or whatever. So just to be super clear, like, I had transitioned my entire business from the internet to working with people, and that transition was set to take place on a Saturday, where my first in-person event was going to be. And on that Friday is when Denver officially, closed everything. And so I was actually still going to do it. And the event space was like, no, you can't do it. So I actually, like, went from having a pretty big thriving business to this transition, having it all cut off. And then I was stuck with a choice, as we all are, right? It's like, how do I want to proceed now? And, one of the things that I've seen, and I've seen it from our leadership and I've seen it from a lot of people, is that they get very reactive in crisis. And to me, when crisis does come up, the questions that you ask yourself when you're amidst turmoil, they're going to define who you become on the other end of this. And understand that this is going to end. All of the turmoil that we go through does come to an end. And you're either going to be better for having asked yourself the right questions and evolved yourself through that process, or you're going to be a way worse version of yourself. And there's a lot of people right now that are way worse versions of themselves. I've seen everywhere that, like, marijuana, alcohol, porn, all those things are skyrocketing right now. And I'm a live and let live person. I think if you're into that stuff, then you should be into that stuff. But I also know that most people are not choosing them. They're using them to cope. They're using them to escape. They're using them to barely survive. And I don't think that this life is about barely surviving. I think we have an opportunity to thrive, but it really matters. Once you find yourself amidst chaos, like, it really matters how you conduct yourself and the kind of questions that you ask yourself and who you strive to be. So all of that to say, I've taken this moment to just get contemplative, really. I've been very contemplative. I've been trying to ask myself some bigger questions. Like, I think the easiest thing I could have done is just go backwards and be like, okay, I was wrong. I'll restart my entire internet business. And I'm like, but I went away from that because I was feeling called away from that. And so maybe the world has other things in store. And so it's up to me to figure out what those are. But I think, the biggest mistake would just be to like run into adversity and then immediately go backwards just because you're scared. I think the number one thing that I've done throughout this, through meditation, through all my contemplative practice, is really learn to shoulder the fear, acknowledge the fear, but not allow it to make me mindless and to make me go in a direction that I don't actually want to go in, which I think I'm seeing a lot of people do, unfortunately.
Absolutely. And I think, I had Aaron Gaeta on, one of the other instructors in the trials, and Aaron, in a similar way, is very prepared for situations like this. He's, self-admittedly a prepper, so he's prepared in a lot of different ways for something like this. But it is that preparation. The people who have been really trying to get ready for this are in a very different boat, it would seem, than a lot of other people. And you mentioned that you'd seen a lot of things like the alcohol and marijuana and porn industries had really, they're in a really good spot because of this, because a lot of people
Totally.
are just not sure how to handle it and are trying to use things to either blunt their emotions or distract themselves from the situation. In your opinion, having done a lot of this work over a long period of time, is it possible for somebody who wasn't prepared coming into this to sort of shift their mindset so that they can prepare as they go?
Yeah, totally. I mean, look, the best time to plant a tree was yesterday, and the second best time is right now, right? I think that we tend to, especially in our culture, man, we really tend to be like, oh, once I have this, I remember like in CrossFit, you'd hear people be like, oh, I'll start CrossFit once I'm fit enough to start, or whatever it is that people are wanting to start. And it's like, oh, I'll run a marathon one day once I lose this weight. It's like, no, this is your life and it's happening right now. And the way that you're acting within it is going to define who you are tomorrow. So if you want to run a marathon tomorrow, you actually got to run right now. You got to start today. And I think, again, like I said, the questions that you ask yourself, they really matter, because it really defines who you're going to be on the other side. When you're in chaos, you can ask yourself, and you're going to ask yourself something, right? Like you're going to have that internal dialogue, and you can ask yourself why questions, right? And it'll disempower the hell out of you. Like, why is this happening? Why me? Why now? It's like, well, it's happening to all of us. And acting like reality's not there or trying to escape it is never a good basis for actually trying to change it. So if you want to change your life, you acknowledge what is, and then you ask yourself a question that puts the keys kind of back in your hand. So for example, this is happening. Now, what am I going to do about it? What are the opportunities that are presenting themselves? And you can coach yourself and train yourself to become better at shouldering chaos while you're in it. And, one thing I would tell you too is like the reason why do people sign up for the process? Why do they spend $6,000 and go get the shit beat out of them in Northern Canada? And sorry if I can swear on here, but they get the
Yeah,
hell beat
absolutely.
out of them in Northern Canada. And it's like, why? Like, what are they going through that for? It's like, well, they want to know if they can become the one, right? They want to know if they can survive it. But in order to do that, you don't find that out until you're in the middle of it. Like you could say all day, oh yeah, I could make it. I saw it all the time when people going through buds in the military. It's like, oh, I could make it. It's like, well, we'll see who you become. But the people that do make it are the people that innately can they begin to ask themselves the right questions, and they begin to direct their mind and their behavior when they're in the turmoil. And that's the only time that it matters, really.
And that's actually really interesting. And for the listeners who don't 100% know what the process or BUDS is the American Navy SEALs selection process. It's a 6-month, give or take, process where they go through a bunch of really rigorous trials, and essentially only the best of the best come out on the other side, having made it through. And then the process is a very challenging, it's considerably shorter than 6 months, trial, essentially designed for civilians who don't necessarily want to be part of the military, or that just isn't in their future for whatever reason, but want to essentially test themselves against some very, very challenging situations. And interestingly, like a lot of this seems very physical, and Rick, you're right, a lot of what we saw up in Northern Ontario was the amount of mental fortitude that came with it. Obviously you had to be in the physical shape to be able to make it through, but there was such a mental piece to getting through what seemed like very physical trials. And it wasn't just mental as in like, I can push through anything. It was very much needing to know why you were here, what your motivations were for it. And experiencing it myself from more of the assessment standpoint, it really surprised me how big that mental fortitude played into surviving situations like that.
Totally. I used to tell students all the time, listen, some people show up and they can do 50 push-ups, and then some people will show up and they can do 500, but nobody can do 5,000. And that's what you're going to have to do. So there's going to come a point where you completely exhaust your physicality, your physical prowess and your ability to perform. And then at that point, it's going to come down to the mental game completely. And, one of the things, when you're in these processes, like I won't talk about the process just to not kind of give away trade secrets, but when you talk about like buds or some selection course, you'll notice like there's a level, the instructors are so dehuman. They're so less than human. They give no quarter, they give no mercy, and they just keep the pain, they keep the pressure coming. Well, part of that is because we're so conditioned in our world to look for it's deeply human to look for other people to solve your problems. It's a deeply human characteristic to look for other people to help you and get you through. But what you actually need to figure out is that you're the answer that you've been looking for. You're the one that's in the way, and you're the one that can get out of the way. I think that at the end of the day, it's the people that do figure out how to thrive in those environments. It's because they sort of transcend their perceived limitations of self. And in doing so, they embody this power that they didn't even know that they had. And sometimes like we have to meet an obstacle so great that it pulls that potential out of us. Because a lot of times our life, the reason I wrote a book called Burn Your Couch is because your couch won't pull that potential out of you. I don't actually care if you have a couch or not, right? It's a metaphor, but
actually, before I read the book, I took it a completely different way, where it was all being a chiropractor about the physical implications of just sitting on the couch for that long. And
well, those two.
What I knew of you at that point was a mix between buds and Rick does some crazy ultra marathons. More on that physical aspect, but yeah, the potential and the emotional aspect of it comes hugely into play. So
Totally.
as somebody who has in the past worked, and I'm sure in the future will start up once the world starts up again, working with trying to take people through this process, what are some simple steps people could take right now to get that process moving?
I would say that there are two. I think the first one is what I've already mentioned, which is, check the quality of the questions that you're asking yourself. Sometimes we tend to dwell on problems, and because of that, we're not actually anywhere near a solution. We're actually just magnifying the problems that we have. But you could think about a problem and a solution as two parts to a whole. And so if a problem exists, a solution exists. And so spend a little bit of your time actually defining the problem that you're trying to solve, right? If the problem is, oh God, I'm out of work and I need to survive, then there's a whole possible, problem set. There's a whole possible solution set for that. But maybe the problem's different than that. Maybe there were parts of your life before that you didn't like so much. And right now you're just forgetting of that because you're scared. But if you can learn to ask yourself better questions, maybe you can actually use this as a catalyst to change your life. I think that's probably the first and foremost important thing, is that you just learn to increase the quality of the problem that you're actually trying to solve, and you ask yourself better questions. The second thing too is that you should probably, like in the West, we're taught that every problem that arises is something we have to do something about. And we're taught that like when we have emotions, we have to do something about them. But that's actually not true at all. And this culture of always feeling like we have to do something, it makes us very reactive because things pop up and we're like, oh God, we have to do something about it. And it's like, do you? Maybe you just need to think about it a little bit and maybe get a little bit of space from it so that you're not controlled by the emotions and the fear of it. Maybe you need to acknowledge all of the parts. And I think just learning to create some space in your life and not always feeling like you have to do something about it will increase the chance that you find a solution that actually serves your life. You can think about it like this: the quicker you react to something, the reason that people that are reactive screw up their life more than other people is because the quicker you react to something, the higher chance of error. You just haven't thought about it fully. And so learn to give yourself some space. Like, you're not going to die today. And so most of the problems that we are reacting to, they've already happened or they're yet to happen. but the moment is actually normally perfect. And if you can just learn to create some space and just sit in the moment and ask yourself some questions, regardless of the pressure that's coming onto you, then you can find some answers that'll work for you a lot better. And I think that's really what I've tried to do in this moment is like, okay, well, I'm not going to react to this just because, how could I, well, let me put it this way. It's actually just a bad idea to allow the environment to corral your behavior your entire life. So regardless of what the world's doing, create a little bit of space and ask yourself what you want to do. You can't play defense your entire life and think that you're going to be able to thrive, right? You don't get rich by trying not to go broke. They're very different game strategies. And so stop reacting so much and just create a little bit of space and realize right now in this moment, everything's okay. You just need some space to think about what you want to do.
I think that's some great advice, and something I've actually been doing since the shutdown is slowly going through some of the trials. And I know part of your lesson plan and curriculum in through there is doing some of that, taking that step back, journaling, and it's been really helpful. There's been some revelations for even me there that I haven't come to on my own before, and just being able to sit back, take that space, I've been able to make some changes, and I think I'm going to be much better for having done it and for some of this time that otherwise could have just been a complete crisis.
Totally. Did you journal prior to starting that course? Did you have a journaling practice?
I did, and I know something that you had actually challenged was to do much longer journaling sessions than I would normally do. Mm-hmm. So for me, I would flip between doing some stream of consciousness journaling and some guided journaling and some stems journaling, which is like kind of a complete the sentence thing, and you're just writing a couple finishes to a bunch of different questions, and it was all helpful. Like there was always something that came out of it, or almost always something that came out of it. But it was interesting because the longer I sat, I expected to just almost go blank at one point, but knowing that I had this time blocked off for it, a lot more started to come and flow out of me than I had expected to or than had before. And it was a little deeper, I think. So just giving myself that extra space and being able to ask myself those bigger questions and have blocked the time to do it. There were some days, I think, before where it was more I was going through the motions at times. I was doing it because I knew it was the right thing to do, and I'd get it in and get it done and then head on to the next kind of task for the morning. And so it really helped knowing that I had this amount of time allocated to it, and going from there, just some things that I'd struggled with in the past that really started to make sense. And I sort of got the motivation behind why I struggled with it or why I acted in certain ways.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think that we have a lot of us is existing on a level that we just aren't aware of in our conscious every day-to-day life when we're thinking about bills and we're thinking about relationships and, all the stuff that we have going on. And so you've got to find some practices that allow you to get to a deeper level of your own being so that you can figure out what you think about things. And all of these different practices are just tools. I think that we spend so much time in modern culture dwelling on our problems. And it's like, listen, if you could think your way out of this problem, you wouldn't have it in the first place. You'd already be there, but you can't. So you need some tools to help give some of your thoughts an off ramp, make sense of some stuff, clarify some stuff. And I think to your point, that's the real benefit of these practices.
And I mean, frankly, I don't know if as much as it's going to be hard, there's ever going to be a better time to really start them, because for most people right now, there's no shortage of it. It's just tough to do.
Totally.
So with that and having kind of that laid out, I think that's sort of a great template that people can sort of start to act on and follow in terms of getting some healthy practices in mentally. A couple of rapid fire things for you. What is the thing that you are most looking forward to when the world opens up again?
I miss the mountains. Not that they're fully off limits right now, but we were, the ski season here in Colorado was just starting to get good and it got closed down. And so I really just miss, I miss going into the mountains, which is kind of wild that they're even off limits. That's a different topic altogether, but that's what I'm looking forward to. I also I miss people, man. I'm such an extrovert. It's like I have all these friends that live around me that I just haven't seen in months. And I'm like, God, I cannot wait to just have a barbecue and hug my friends.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been starting to host some coffees on Friday mornings just to be able to connect with some people that I, I might live 5 minutes away from, but I haven't been able to see in however long. So it's sort of been interesting trying to adapt to all that.
That's cool.
And then the other one, any favorite quarantine snacks?
I have crushed wheat thins at a level that is just it's just ridiculous. Uh, yeah,
Not what I would go for personally, but to each their own.
man, they're just too easy. It's like animal crackers and wheat thins. I just keep grabbing a handful and then they're gone. So yeah, those are the death of me.
Well, there we go. Thank you so much for coming on, Rick. It's been awesome talking to you again.
Man, I appreciate having me. I think this stuff it's really important, and we need to have dialogues because just the final point is, we in our culture today, you see a lot of people act as if, mental health. We always talk about mental health awareness, right? But the reality is we tend to draw awareness around things that we don't have cures for, and a lot of our mental health problem could be solved. And so we need to treat it as something that can be solved. And I think that's where the dialogue needs to go. It needs to go on, like, what are the tools? What are the tricks? What do people need to know? So I'm more than grateful and happy to do it. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I don't know what it's like for you guys, but I know the Canadian government just launched sort of a mental health and substance use resources portal, because obviously there are a lot of people, especially stuck alone and with all the concerns that can pop up in a situation like this.
Totally.
So I'll make sure I link to that in the show notes. I don't know if it's completely closed off to Canadian citizens or not. I don't think I had any issues signing up. So just if there are some Americans listening to this too, I don't know what you guys have available to you, but it might be worth checking out.
Totally. Yeah.